Hey, Gospel City and friends that may be joining in. We're living in uncertain times. People have a lot of questions of how to understand this. What is God doing? How do we make sense of this? And as you go through these questions, the reality is this is not the first tragedy that you may have gone through or the first epidemic worldwide. These things are actually common to our lives. And so much so that even in Jesus' time, there were things that have happened that people had questions about. And so in one time, in Luke 13, as Pilate had persecuted and killed some Jews for practicing their faith, Jesus' response is actually very insightful for us in terms of how we can understand all that is going on. Because what he says in response to Pilate's persecution of Jews was, do you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than all the other Galileans because they have suffered in this way? And then Jesus continues that on, referring to another incident at the Tower of Siloam when that tower fell and killed 18. And he asks the people, were they worse offenders? And you may have heard that this is what God is doing. There's a judgment that God has poured upon maybe China or some other people. But we don't know what God is doing on that level. What we do know is what God is saying to us. Because the point in which Jesus was making at that time was not to focus on those who either have the virus or what God is doing. But the point that Jesus was trying to make is, what is God doing in your heart and in your life? Because his response to both situations is the same. He says, no, I tell you that they're not worse or they're worse offenders. No, I tell you, but unless you repent, you will all likewise perish. The one thing that we can know for certain is what God is doing in our hearts and in our lives. The point that Jesus is trying to make here is not about those who have received this virus or were persecuted, or that for the people where the tower fell on them. The point of emphasis is not on them. The point of emphasis is on those who have not. And the reality is we will all perish. We will all die. And what this is a reminder of is we do not have control over our lives. We do not have control over our death. And through all of this, we're reminded that God is in control, and to put our dependence and our trust back on him. You see, it's actually good news that Jesus, the one thing that he does tell us is to repent, because that's actually what we have control over. But also it's good news because when Jesus started off his ministry, it was the same message. And the only reason we can repent is because God is moving. That is the good news. That if we were to go back to God, he welcomes us back. That through all that is going on, what God is doing with his church, with his people, is saying, come back. Trust in me again. Because for a lot of us, we're having a hard time. We're having a hard time financially. We're having a hard time not being in community. We're having a hard time being isolated or simply just staying at home. And in all these ways, we're shown our limits, our needs, our dependence on others. And really, what it's showing us more than anything is how the only true hope, the only living hope that we ever have is Christ and what he has done in his life, his death, his resurrection. And so that's my encouragement to you. Think about ways in which God is leading you. How is God leading you? What is God trying to restore in your life? What are the ways in which you can repent? Maybe it's your relationship with your family, to invest a little bit more time in your children. Maybe it's to pause and to slow down and and to adopt healthy rhythms of life, to understand that you are a human being. You are created in the image of God. You're created to have that relationship with Him. You're called to have that relationship with others. You know, in another time, in John 9, as a blind man is addressed, someone asks Jesus, is this man blind because of his sin or his parents' sin? And Jesus' response is neither. It's actually that God can work and His work can be displayed to all people. As God is moving in ways that we can't see, what He is doing in our own hearts and lives is calling us back to Him, that we would have a restored life with Him, a restored life with others. And that's one of the good things that we can take away through all that is going on. God is moving. He wants more of you.